Ambassador Kyung walked into the big meeting room on Terra Station. She thought this would be just another boring talk about trade deals and mining rights. Her long, scaled fingers drummed on the table as she waited. The Empire had been dealing with humans for only 50 years, and they were always so predictable. But when she looked up, something felt different. Admiral Day sat across from her perfectly still. His dark eyes were cold as winter stone. Between them lay a single piece of paper that would change everything. Kyung had been doing this job for 200 years. She had negotiated with species across the galaxy. Some begged, some threatened. Some tried to bribe her with precious metals and rare crystals. But humans usually just accepted whatever the Empire wanted. They were young and weak, after all. Admiral Day picked up the document. His voice was steady and calm, like he was reading the weather report. All Imperial vessels, personnel and influence are hereby banned from Terran space. This includes every human colony world spanning dozens of systems. The words hung in the air, like smoke from a dying fire. Kyung blinked her yellow eyes twice, and then 3 times. She had heard wrong. She must have heard wrong. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" Her translator implant buzzed softly in her ear. Admiral Day set the paper down carefully. "You heard correctly. As of right now, the Galactic Empire is no longer welcome in any space controlled by humanity. Your ships, your traders, your officials, your tax collectors, all of them need to leave." Kyung's mouth opened, showing rows of sharp white teeth. Then she started laughing. It was a harsh sound like metal scraping against rock. Her whole body shook with it. She laughed until tears ran down her scaled cheeks. "Oh, this is wonderful," she gasped between fits of laughter. "Do you have any idea what you just said? You're a Class 7 species. That's barely above the animals. We keep as pets. The galaxy is ruled by beings who have conquered thousands of worlds. We have turned entire solar systems into parking lots for our fleets." Admiral Day just watched her laugh. His face showed nothing, no anger, no fear, no doubt. When Kyung finally stopped, he spoke again. "We're aware of our classification. We're also aware you've never encountered a species quite like us." The confidence in his voice made Kyung's laughter die in her throat. She studied his face carefully. Most species showed something when they challenged the Empire. The brave ones showed determination mixed with fear. The stupid ones showed blind rage. The desperate ones showed the wild look of cornered animals, but Admiral Day showed nothing at all. That was new. That was wrong. "Listen, human," Kyung said, leaning forward. "Your entire species has existed for what? 200,000 years? Maybe 300? The Galactic Empire has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. 10,000. We were building star destroyers when your ancestors were still learning to make fire." She activated her wrist communicator with a sharp tap. The blue hologram of her aide appeared instantly. "Contact Fleet Command," she ordered. "Tell them we need a punishment force sent to human space immediately. Something with enough firepower to crack a moon in half." The aide nodded and vanished. Kyung turned back to Admiral Day with a satisfied smile. "You have 72 hours to take back what you just said. After that, we'll show you why no one challenges the Empire." Admiral Day stood up slowly. He was tall for a human, almost matching Kyung's height. "Consider this your formal notice," he said. "Any Imperial vessel found in our space after 72 hours will be considered hostile. We will defend ourselves accordingly." "Defend yourselves?" Kyung's voice pitched higher. "With what? Your little patrol boats? Your mining ships? We have dreadnoughts that could glass your home planet in an afternoon." "Perhaps," Admiral Day said. He picked up his copy of the document and walked toward the door. "But you've never fought humans before. You might find us more trouble than you expect." The door slid shut behind him with a soft hiss. Kyung stood alone in the conference room, staring at the empty chair where he had been sitting. Something cold crawled up her spine, something she had not felt in decades. For the first time in her long career, Ambassador Kyung wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Fleet Admiral Vell stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. Behind him stretched the most powerful punishment fleet the Empire had assembled in 50 years. 12 dreadnoughts hung in space like sleeping giants, each one the size of a small city. He had done this dance many times before. Some upstart species would get ideas above their station. They would make demands or refuse to pay taxes. Then the Empire would send ships like these, and the problem would disappear. Usually the rebels surrendered the moment they saw what was coming for them. "Admiral," his aide whispered, "are you sure 12 dreadnoughts aren't overkill for humans? They only have a few dozen colonies." Vel turned his scarred face toward the younger officer. 3 long claw marks ran from his left eye to his jaw, a souvenir from the last species that had thought they could fight the Empire. "Better to use too much force than too little," he said. "When word spreads about what happens to humans, every other species in the galaxy will remember their place. Fear is the Empire's greatest weapon." The bridge hummed with quiet activity. Officers checked weapons systems and shield generators. Everything was perfect, just like always. Vel had commanded punishment fleets for 40 years. He knew exactly how this would end. Navigation Officer Tay looked up from her station. She was young, maybe only 50 years old, with the bright green skin of her species still unmarked by battle scars. "Sir, we're approaching the edge of human space. Sensors detect a single human vessel dead ahead." Vel moved to the tactical display. A tiny dot appeared on the screen, so small it looked like a speck of dust. Around it, 12 much larger dots represented his dreadnoughts. Just one ship? He almost felt disappointed. "I expected them to at least try to put up a fight." The main viewing screen shifted to show the human vessel. It was sleek and white, maybe a quarter the size of one of his dreadnoughts. It looked like the kind of ship humans used for scientific research or cargo runs between colonies. "They're broadcasting something," Communications Officer Min reported. "Same message on repeat. Put it through." A calm human voice filled the bridge. "Turn back now, this is your only warning. Turn back now, this is your only warning." Several officers chuckled. Vel felt his own lips curl into a smile. The arrogance of these creatures never stopped amusing. "Him, one ship," he said loudly enough for the entire bridge crew to hear. "One tiny ship thinks it can stop 12 Imperial dreadnoughts. Advance the fleet. Full speed ahead." The massive ships began moving forward. Their engines created trails of blue fire against the black of space. Vel imagined the human crew watching those 12 giants approaching. They were probably scrambling to escape right now, or maybe sending desperate messages back to Earth begging for help. But sensor technician Bora was frowning at her console. She tapped the screen several times, then ran a full diagnostic. The frown got deeper. "Admiral," she called out, her voice uncertain, "I'm getting some strange readings from that corvette." Strange how? Vel was only half listening. He was already planning his victory report to Imperial Command. "The power signature, it doesn't make sense." Bora's fingers danced across her controls, running the scan again. "According to these readings, that little ship is generating more energy than all 12 of our dreadnoughts combined." The bridge went quiet. Vel walked over to Bora's station and looked at her screens. Numbers scrolled past in columns of green text. Energy output, reactor efficiency, power distribution, all impossible for a ship that size. "Run the scan again," he ordered. Bora's hands shook slightly as she worked. "Same readings, sir. If these numbers are correct, that corvette has enough power to run a small planet." "That's impossible," Navigation Officer Tay said from across the bridge. "Our intelligence reports say humans barely understand basic fusion technology. They're still using chemical rockets on some of their colonies." Admiral Vel stared at the human ship on the screen. It hadn't moved. It wasn't running away or calling for backup. It just sat there in space, waiting. The calm voice continued its warning. "Turn back now. This is your only warning." For the first time in 40 years of commanding Imperial fleets, Vel felt something cold touch his heart. It wasn't fear. He had forgotten how to feel fear decades ago, but it was something close to uncertainty. "What have these humans been doing?" he muttered under his breath. The 12 dreadnoughts continued their advance, but Admiral Vel was no longer thinking about easy victory. He was thinking about the impossible energy readings and wondering what other surprises the humans might have prepared. The 12 Imperial dreadnoughts moved forward like a wall of steel and death. Admiral Vel watched from his bridge as the distance to the lone human corvette shrank on his tactical display. His weapons officers were already charging. "The main cannons, this would be over in seconds." "Target locked, Admiral. his gunner reported. "Shall I fire?" Vel raised his hand, ready to give the order that would turn the human ship into glowing debris. But then something impossible happened. The human corvette simply vanished. Not destroyed, vanished. One moment it was there on his sensors, the next moment empty space. His entire bridge crew stared at their screens in confusion. "Where did it go?" Vel demanded. "I don't know, sir," sensor technician Bora said, her voice shaking. "It just disappeared. No explosion, no debris, nothing." Then, space around the Imperial fleet began to ripple like water. Human ships emerged from nowhere, dozens of them appearing from what looked like tears in reality itself. They flickered in and out of normal space like ghosts, there 1 second and gone the next. "Impossible," Navigation Officer Tay whispered. "No one has that kind of technology." The human ships were smaller than the Imperial dreadnoughts, but they moved like living things. They danced between the massive Imperial vessels, appearing and disappearing at will. Vel had never seen anything like it in 40 years of space combat. "All ships, open fire," he ordered into his communicator. "Target anything that moves." The Imperial fleet unleashed hell. Hundreds of energy cannons lit up the darkness, filling space with deadly beams of concentrated plasma. But the human ships weren't there anymore. They had vanished again, only to reappear somewhere else entirely. Then the humans fired back. Their weapons made no sound in the vacuum of space, but Vel felt the impact through his ship's hull. The bridge lights flickered, warning alarms began, screaming throughout the dreadnought. "Shields down to 60%, his engineer shouted over the noise. "How is that possible? They only fired once." More hits followed. The human weapons cut through Imperial energy shields like they didn't exist at all. Vel watched in horror as one of his dreadnoughts, a ship that had taken 3 years to build, simply broke apart. Its hull split open like ripe fruit, spilling atmosphere and debris into space. "Admiral," Communications Officer Min's voice cracked with panic. "The destroyer's edge is gone, just gone, and the Iron Fist is reporting critical damage." On the main screen, another dreadnought exploded in a ball of white fire. Then another. The humans were picking apart his fleet piece by piece, and there was nothing he could do to stop them. A new alarm sounded on Vel's bridge, the proximity warning. He spun around to see a human ship materializing directly above his flagship. It was sleek and dark, like a predator from the deepest ocean. "How did they get through our shields?" he screamed. The answer came in the form of cutting beams that sliced through his ship's armor like butter. Emergency lights bathed the bridge in red. The artificial gravity failed, sending officers floating through the air. Then everything went black. When Admiral Vel woke up, he was lying on a medical bed in a room he didn't recognize. The walls were white and clean, nothing like the grey metal of Imperial ships. Soft music played in the background, something with stringed instruments that made him think of peaceful gardens. A human woman in a white coat stood nearby, checking readings on a tablet. She looked up when she saw him moving. "You're awake," she said in perfect Imperial standard. "Good. I was beginning to worry about that head injury." Vel tried to sit up, but restraints held him down. Through a large window, he could see the remains of his fleet drifting in space. Twisted metal and frozen atmosphere clouds marked where 12 mighty dreadnoughts had once been. "My ships," he whispered. "I'm sorry about your crew," the woman said, and she actually sounded like she meant it. "We rescued everyone we could from the wreckage. Most of them are in medical bays like this one." A door slid open, and another human entered. This one was a man with grey hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He carried himself like someone used to being in charge. "Admiral Vel," the man said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. "I'm Dr. Wu, head of Human Defense Research. I hope you're feeling better." Vel stared at him with hatred and confusion. "Your technology," he gasped, looking again at the floating wreckage outside. "Where did you get it? What species gave it to you?" Dr. Wu pulled up a chair and sat down beside the bed. His smile was grim but not unkind. "No one gave us anything, Admiral. We took your superior Imperial technology and made it work the way it should have from the beginning." "That's impossible," Vel said. "Our scientists have perfected these systems over thousands of years." "Your scientists optimized for control and mass production," Dr. Wu replied. He activated a holographic display that showed technical diagrams floating in the air. You built things to be the same across your empire. Easy to manufacture, easy to repair, easy to control. The diagrams shifted, showing human modifications to imperial designs. We optimized for effectiveness. Humans don't just adapt to new technologies, Admiral. We perfect them beyond their original creators' wildest dreams. Outside the window, the last surviving Imperial ships were jumping to hyperspace, fleeing back toward their own territory. Admiral Vell watched his once mighty fleet disappear into points of light, leaving him alone with the humans who had just changed everything. The news traveled faster than any Imperial fleet could move. On communication networks across the galaxy, the impossible story spread from world to world. 12 Imperial dreadnoughts destroyed by a handful of human ships. At first, many species refused to believe it. The Empire had seemed invincible for so long that defeat was unthinkable. But the wreckage was real. Sensor logs didn't lie. And slowly, something began to change in the hearts of billions of beings who had lived their entire lives under Imperial rule. On the mining world of Veltar Prime, a worker named Kesh put down his heavy drilling equipment and looked up at the grey sky. For 30 years he had extracted precious metals from the planet's core, working 16-hour days to meet Imperial quotas. His people had been slaves in all but name for 3 generations. "Is it true?" he asked his supervisor, a nervous creature with 4 arms and worried eyes. "Did the humans really destroy an entire Imperial fleet?" Word spread through the mines like fire through dry grass. Within hours, the Veltar workers had stopped their drilling. Within days, they had declared independence from the Empire. The local Imperial governor sent frantic messages to the capital, but no one was listening anymore. Then the humans arrived. They didn't come in massive warships or with armies of soldiers. Instead, small transport ships landed quietly on Veltar Prime, carrying men and women who looked like teachers, more than warriors. They set up simple camps outside the main cities and sent a message to the rebel leaders. "We're here to help, Captain." Jin of the Human Defense Corps stood in a converted warehouse on the edge of the capital city. Around her sat 50 Veltar rebels, miners, factory workers, and shopkeepers who had never held weapons in their lives. They looked scared but determined. "The Empire will send ships," said Kesh, now the unofficial leader of the rebellion. "Big ships with lots of guns. How do we fight something like that?" Captain Jin smiled. She was small for a human, with short black hair and calloused hands that spoke of years of hard work. "The same way humans have always fought when the odds were against us. We don't meet them head-on. We make them wish they had never come." She activated a holographic projector showing a map of the local star system. "How your planet has asteroid fields, right? And old mining tunnels that go deep underground." The rebels nodded. "Good. We're going to teach you how to use what you have. The Empire expects you to line up in neat rows so they can blast you from orbit. Instead, we're going to teach you to be ghosts." Over the next weeks, Captain Jin and her team taught the Veltar rebels everything humans had learned about guerrilla warfare. How to move supplies through asteroid fields without being detected. How to use abandoned mines as hidden bases. How to strike fast and disappear before the enemy knew what hit them. But more importantly, they taught them something the Empire had never faced before. The idea that they deserved to be free. "Freedom isn't given," Captain Jin told the gathered rebels during one of their training sessions. "It's taken, and we'll teach you how to take it and keep it." The same scene was playing out on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Wherever humans appeared, rebellion followed. Not because they brought superior weapons or technology, but because they brought hope. Emperor Thane sat in his throne room on the Imperial capital world, watching red lights blink out on his star map. Each light represented a world in revolt. Each world that went dark was one more piece of his empire crumbling away. "How many today?" he asked his intelligence chief, a tall, thin being with pale skin and too many eyes. 17 systems have declared independence, Your Majesty. The Kepler colonies, the Rigel mining stations, and the entire Outer Rim sector." The Emperor's clawed hands gripped the arms of his throne. "Send more fleets. Crush these rebellions before they spread." "We've tried, Your Majesty. But the humans, they're not fighting the way we expected. They teach the rebels to hide, to strike from shadows, to turn our own size against us. Our big ships can't fight enemies they can't find. The intelligence chief activated his own holographic display, showing battle reports from across the galaxy. But there's something else, something worse. They're not just teaching military tactics. What do you mean? They're spreading ideas. Your Majesty, dangerous ideas. Concepts like individual rights, democracy, self-determination. They're teaching entire species that they don't have to obey us just because we're stronger. Emperor Thane stared at the dimming map of his empire. In all his years of rule, he had faced rebellions before. Desperate species would sometimes fight back when pushed too far. But those rebellions had always been about specific grievances. Unfair taxes, harsh treatment, resource extraction. This was different. This was about something fundamental that the Empire had never encountered before, the belief that no thinking being should live in chains. The humans, he said quietly, they're not just fighting us, they're changing how everyone thinks about us. More red lights blinked out on the star map. The intelligence chief nodded grimly. Their greatest weapon isn't their technology, Your Majesty. It's their infectious belief that everyone deserves freedom. And that belief is spreading faster than our fleets can move. Emperor Thane realized, perhaps too late, that he wasn't just fighting a war against human ships and weapons. He was fighting a war against an idea that had already taken root in the hearts of billions of beings across the galaxy. And ideas, once planted, were much harder to destroy than fleets. 6 months had passed since that first meeting on Terra Station, and the galaxy looked nothing like it had before. Emperor Thane sat alone in his private chamber, staring at a star map that told the story of his empire's collapse. Where once thousands of green dots had marked Imperial-controlled worlds, now only 4 remained, his homeworld and 3 systems whose populations still believed in the old ways. Everything else glowed blue now, marking the worlds of the free. Worlds Alliance. It was a name that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Free worlds, as if freedom was something that could exist alongside order and proper hierarchy. His aide, one of the few officials who hadn't abandoned him for the rebellion, knocked softly on the door. Your Majesty, the nervous creature said, the human ambassador has agreed to meet with you, but she says it must be on neutral ground. Emperor Thane almost laughed. Neutral ground. As if he was now just another leader instead of the ruler of the galaxy. But what choice did he have? His fleets were gone, scattered or destroyed. His admirals had either died fighting the humans or switched sides to join the growing alliance. Where? He asked. A human space station at the edge of what used to be the neutral zone. It's called New Hope Station. Even their names mocked him. New Hope. As if the old ways, the proven ways that had kept the galaxy stable for 10,000 years, were something to be abandoned for uncertain dreams. But he went anyway, traveling in a single diplomatic ship with just a skeleton crew. The once mighty emperor of the galaxy, reduced to begging for an audience with creatures who had barely learned to walk upright when his empire was already ancient. New Hope Station was not what he expected. Instead of the gleaming palace he would have demanded for such a meeting, it was a simple structure of metal and glass, functional, unpretentious, built for purpose rather than display. Very human. Ambassador Hannah met him at the airlock. She was younger than he had expected, with kind eyes and an easy smile that somehow made him feel even more defeated. She wore simple clothes, no elaborate robes, no crown, no signs of rank beyond a small badge on her jacket. Your Majesty, she said, offering the human gesture of respect, a slight bow of her head. Thank you for coming. I know this can't be easy. She led him to a conference room that was just as plain as the rest of the station. A simple table, 2 chairs, a large window looking out into space, no throne, no ceremony, no recognition of the ancient protocols that had governed such meetings for millennia. Emperor Thane sat down heavily, feeling every one of his 800 years. Through the window, he could see ships from dozens of different worlds flying together in formation. Species that had hated each other for centuries were now working side by side. It was impossible, and yet there it was. How? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. How did a species barely 2 centuries old bring down an empire that lasted 10,000 years? Ambassador Hana settled into her chair, her expression thoughtful. She looked out at the mixed fleet beyond the window, then back at him. You know, when humans first met your empire, we were impressed, she said. 10,000 years of stability, thousands of worlds working together. It seemed like something we should aspire to. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But then we started asking questions that apparently no one had asked in a very long time. Why did it have to work this way? Why couldn't species govern themselves? Why did strength have to mean domination? Emperor Thane felt a flash of his old anger. Because that's how the galaxy works. The strong rule, the weak obey. That's the natural order. Without it, there's only chaos. Is it? Ambassador Hana gestured toward the window again. Look out there. Do you see chaos? The Emperor looked. The mixed fleet moved with precision and purpose. Ships from the aquatic worlds of Kepler worked alongside the rock dwellers from the asteroid belts. Former enemies shared space and resources, coordinating their efforts through common goals rather than fear. We never learned that some things were impossible, Ambassador Hana continued. For your empire spent 10,000 years teaching species to accept their place, to never question authority, to believe that change was futile. You were very good at it. She leaned forward slightly. But we're human. We've never been good at accepting limitations. By the time we found out that conquest was supposed to be impossible, we'd already prevented it. By the time we learned that empires lasting millennia couldn't fall, we'd already toppled yours. And now? Emperor Thane asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. Now every species in this alliance learns what we learned long ago, that freedom is the natural state of intelligent life. Everything else, every system of domination and control, is just a temporary aberration. The Emperor stared at the fleet of free worlds beyond the window. Representatives from hundreds of species, all working together not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. It was messy and complicated and inefficient compared to the clean hierarchy of his empire. It was also clearly working. What happens to me now? He asked. Ambassador Hana's expression softened. That's up to you. Your homeworld and the loyal systems are welcome to join the alliance as equals, or you can remain independent. We won't force anyone to be free. She stood up, extending her hand in the human gesture of farewell. But the old empire is gone, Your Majesty. The galaxy has remembered what it felt like to choose its own path. Emperor Thane left New Hope Station in his single ship, carrying with him the end of everything he had known. Behind him, the free. Worlds Alliance continued their work of building something new from the ruins of his ancient empire. The last emperor of the Galactic Empire departed into a galaxy where the word impossible had finally lost all meaning.